This Level 8 Music Theory course has been generously sponsored by Musicians English, the Calgary-based organization that helps connect Korean music teachers with the RCM's curriculum. For more information about this great program, check out the link in the description below. Now here we are in Level 8, and you're probably wondering, what could there be left to learn about major and minor scales? Fortunately, in Level 8, there are no new scales you have to learn, and there are no new key signatures you have to learn either. However, there are a few new curveballs you have to worry about. The first thing we're going to talk about today is that you have to learn how to write major and minor scales that begin and end on a note that isn't the tonic. And the second thing we're going to learn about is how to deal with what are called the Seacliffs, namely the alto clef and the tenor clef, and how to write key signatures within those clefs. So let's start with the former. Let's learn how to begin and end major scales on a note that isn't the tonic. Now, back in the earlier grades, we learned the special names for the scale degrees: tonic, supertonic, mediant, subdominant, dominant, submediant, and leading tone. Now, on your RCM Level 8 exam, you might get a question that sounds something like this. Write an A major scale from mediant to mediant. Or you might get a question like, write a D minor harmonic scale from dominant to dominant. This means we can't start on the tonic anymore. They specifically want us to use the notes of the major scales, but we have to begin and end on a different note. Let's do the first example, an A major scale from mediant to mediant. What might that look like? So here's a regular A major scale, just like the one we learned in Level 5. A is the tonic. Now, if the question specifically asks us to start on the mediant instead, the first note we are going to write is not the tonic, but the mediant, which is C sharp in this case. So instead of playing from tonic to tonic, we are going to play the exact same notes contained within A major's key signature, but we're going to start on the mediant and end on the mediant. It's going to sound like this. So all those notes are found within A major, but we started on the mediant, went up to the next mediant, and came back down. Let's do the second example I spoke of, a D minor harmonic scale from dominant to dominant. Let's remind ourselves what a regular D minor harmonic scale looks like. D was the tonic, and C sharp was our raised leading tone. It was a harmonic scale, not a natural scale. Now, what if we play this scale from dominant to dominant? In this case, we won't be starting on the tonic anymore, which is D in this case. We'll be starting on the dominant of D, which is A, and we have to play the exact same notes. It'll sound like this. Now notice the leading tone didn't move. Sometimes students get confused. We know this is a harmonic minor scale, but some students might think that because we're starting on the dominant, the seventh note of this scale is G, and that G sharp is the new leading tone. That's not true at all. The leading tone stays in the same place. So the leading tone is fixed in comparison to the tonic. Just because we started this scale on A, the dominant, the leading tone didn't move. It's in the same place. And this goes the same for melodic minor scales, where the 6th and 7th are raised on the way up and lowered on the way down. They have to stay in the same place in comparison to the original tonic. You don't get to move them just because you started on a different note. So that's the first new thing that you'll be asked to do on your level 8 exam. It's the scales you've already learned, but you have to start in a different place. Now here's something more tricky. The second concept, we have to worry about alto clef and tenor clef. Now the nickname for these things are called Seacliffs. Some of you might know, and some of you might not, the nickname for the treble clef is the G clef, because it's kind of reminiscent of a G, and the big loop sits on the G line. And the nickname for the bass clef is the F clef, because it kind of looks like an F, I suppose, and the two dots sit on where the F line would be in the bass clef. Alto and tenor clef are called Seacliffs, mainly because it's their job to tell us where middle C is. So an alto and tenor clef looks like this. You can see it's two big C's, and right in the middle there's what kind of looks like an arrow. Now whatever line this arrow sits on is going to be middle C for us. So when we write an alto clef, the arrow between the two C's ends up sitting on the middle line of the staff. That's middle C. And for the tenor clef, it sits one line above. That's middle C in the context of the tenor clef. So not only do you have to learn how to write scales starting and ending on different notes, but you have to learn how to write them in the alto and tenor clef. It's not too hard, but one thing I find tricky is knowing where to put the key signatures in the alto and tenor clef. Now back in level 5, we learned how to write key signatures in the treble and bass clef. For example, the sharps. F sharps is the highest one, and we always zigzag down in a downwards direction. The alto and tenor clef are very, very similar. Almost all of them start high and zigzag down, except for one. The sharps in the tenor clef, the F sharp starts low and zigzags up. This will be a lot clearer for us to see when we go over to the whiteboard and write those things down. So remember, there's no new scales or new key signatures to learn in level 8, but you have to practice getting used to reading scales and writing scales that aren't structurally built on their tonics. Let's go over to the whiteboard now and take a closer look on how to do this in writing.